Hi everyone, this is Kasia Zmokla. Welcome to my channel where you will always find photo editing training and educational videos to help you grow as an artist and photographer. Today we are going to take Caravaggio's inspired color grading and apply to this portrait of Daniel. So this is the original image and we are going to process this image towards this result. Ready? Let's jump right into it. I've been looking recently at some Renaissance paintings, so I've decided to take a closer look at Caravaggio. So if we take a look at these images, we can see that the composition is typically very strong. I would say that most of his paintings, especially some of these darker portraits, they are quite minimalistic. The most characteristic feature of Caravaggio's painting is chiaroscuro. This is the painting technique. So basically he will always use very dark background, so he will set his figures against a super dark background and he will lead those figures with a single source light. So this is characteristic for Caravaggio. Plus, if we take a look at the color grading, we can see that the background is dark, but the colors, even if we are looking at greens, even if we have some cyans, as in case of this portrait, the color palette is warm, so the images are on the dark side. If I would be referring to photography, I would say they are low-key images. However, we have always present this beautiful golden glow. So I have taken one of portraits that I took during my travels. This is Daniel, and I have photographed him in Koh Lanta in Thailand. So this image, this photo was taken with just one source of light. I have taken this picture against the window. By positioning him that way near the window, I have managed to get this very dark background, and basically the image, the composition is very simple. So we have the subject, we have the model, and there is nothing else in this image. So in today's video we are going to process this image. First of all, we are going to take care of the luminosity adjustments, and basically at the end of the edit we will be working on color. So we will again go back to Caravaggio's color palette. We'll take a look at the tones he was using in his paintings, and we are going to apply this palette to our image. So this is the final result that we'll get today. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I'm going to create new variant and we will start from here. So to begin, let's zoom in, and if we evaluate the quality of the skin here, we can see that we are losing some detail here in the highlights. So if we take a look at the histogram, we are not clipping any highlights here. The red channel is a little bit high here, but we are not clipping anything. We are clipping some details in the dark tones. We are clipping blacks, but this doesn't bother me. This is the whole idea behind this edit. I'm going to keep my dark background, however, I want to harmonize the whole image. So right now, those highlights here in the face are a little bit on too bright side. I want to make them a little bit darker. I would like to basically get lower contrast between those strongest highlights and these pitch black dark tones. So I'm going to go back to the very first step and I'm going to take a look at the base characteristics. So I'm going to jump over to the base characteristics tool. As you can see, I have taken this image with Fujifilm X-T2 camera. So in my curve tab here, I will have different options to those of you who were working with different cameras. So the settings here depend on the camera you were using. But my idea here is to pick a different setting that will make my shadows a little bit softer. So basically, as I've mentioned before, I want softer contrast. So I will go for Film Extra Shadow. Whenever you are in a situation when you want to reveal some detail in the shadows, you can use the Film Extra Shadow. So this is before, this is the after. So now we have more detail here. Instead of this just black hole here in the leaf area, we have a little bit more detail. So this helps me. So even though I want to make the contrast quite strong in the end, at this point it helps me to harmonize the image and work further on the face. Okay, as a next step, I'm going to super quickly use the heel brush and just retouch this image just a bit to get rid of the bigger imperfections. Okay, so I have just removed the pieces that were distracting in this portrait. So if you want to learn more about retouching skin with this specific tool, with the healing brush tool, you can find the link down below in the description to this video where I cover this tool in detail. Okay, so we have the quick cleanup out of our way. Now we are going to jump over and work on luminosity adjustments. So I'm going to be working with curves. I'm going to create new field adjustment layer and I'm going to rename it to luminosity curves. So here let's jump over to the exposure tab and let's drag our curves out of the panel. Let's just make them a little bit bigger. So I'm going to begin with the RGB curve. Remember that the RGB curve will always affect colors. It will make colors more saturated. So let's create the first control point. I'm going to drag it lower. I want to make the midtones a little bit darker, but this darkens the blacks too much. So I want to lift my control point for blacks a little bit up. Let's leave it around here. Let's adjust this one and let's create another control point that will anchor the curve here in the range of the highlights and the brightest midtones. So let's go for something like this, and now I'm going to jump over to the Luma curve, and here I will create one control point and lift the curve upwards. So let's go for something like this as the starting point. This point I can maybe move a little bit to the right and up. So on this layer I have set my contrast, I have set basically my luminosity adjustments. This is my starting point. I can always go back here and revise this and fine-tune this. As a next step, I'm going to jump over to my HDR tool and I'm going to close the highlights a little bit. I don't have texture here in the skin. I want to make the contrast between the darkest areas in the face, in the skin, and the highlights basically softer. So I'm going to jump over to my HDR tool and I'm going to work with the highlight slider. So if I go somewhere around here, this is too much. Let's go for, let's say, -20. Okay, let's go a little bit lower with this value. So I want to have those highlights a little bit on a darker side. So something like this looks way better. Let's just see before and after. So this is before the HDR adjustment on highlights, and this is the after. Perfect. Let's now move over and do some special touches that I typically do when I'm working on portraits. So I'm going now to focus on his eye. Let's create a new empty adjustment layer. Let's rename it. Let's call it eye. And here I'm on an empty layer. So I need to grab my brush and let's adjust the brush. Let's go for lower size because I'm going to paint only over his eye. Hardness 0, opacity high, and flow we want to have high as well. Let's just paint over this part. Let's hit M, so the mask, the preview of the mask will be displayed, and we'll see what we are doing. You don't need to be super precise here, but just to cover the dark parts, don't go over the whites. Now I'm going to move over to the HDR tool again and work with shadow slider. So this will very beautifully open up those shadows. I don't want to overdo this, and this actually should be done when we are looking at the whole face, because if we are just focusing on the eye, we can easily go too far. So this is too much. Let's go for something, let's say around 40. So this is before and this is the after. Okay, as a next step, we are going to paint in some light into this portrait. So I will be working with two layers, dodging and burning. With the dodging layer, I will be adding some highlights into selected areas in the image. So I will be working on the face. I want to add some highlights to the hair, maybe to the face, and with burning, I will be deepening shadows. So this is helpful to basically shape the image, to add more dimension, to add more depth. We have the subject and the leaf position in the foreground. The background is pitch black, so it's very flat, but we can still work on the subject. So for example, here we have this quite strong light hitting the back of his neck, here the ear, and this is taking attention from the eye, from his halfly covered face. So we can use the dodging and burning layer to correct it. So let's move right into it. I'm going to create new field adjustment layer, and the first one will be called D for dodging. And here I will be working with Luma curve, because I don't want to affect colors anymore with my luminosity adjustment. So on my Luma curve, I'm going to create one control point and push it upwards. Now let's right click on the layer and go for invert mask. Let's create another field adjustment layer. This one will be called B for burning, and here I will do opposite on Luma curve again. I'm going to create one control point, drag it downwards, and again I'm going to just invert my mask. So at this point I'm going to go for my tablet. I need to be a bit more precise here, and let's begin with my dodging layer. So here I want to adjust my brush. The size, it's a little bit too small. I can increase it here or during the painting with square brackets on my keyboard when it comes for hardness. 0 is fine, opacity 100, and I want to go for low flow, something maybe around 10. So as I've mentioned before, I want to just add some highlights. So let's start here with the hair. We can minimize curves, they are a little bit distracting. So just to add some light in selected areas in the image. So I will be basically going over the hair, and let's focus here on the eye. So we can make his upper lid just a little bit brighter here. Maybe we can brighten the eye a little bit as well. So you want to work in a very subtle way. It is way more effective if you are working with low flow and if you apply several strokes rather than going with high flow and introducing too strong adjustments. Okay, now I'm going to switch to burning, and I'm going to do the opposite. So I will be painting over these areas that I want to make slightly darker. So let's begin with the eye. I will go over the eyebrow and the rest of the face. Okay, so I finished burning. So this is the mask for my burning layer, and this is mask for the dodging layer. So at this point we have our luminosity adjustments in place. If we take a look at the original image, so this is before, this is the after. We are ready to move over and start working on color. So let's create new field adjustment layer, and let's rename this layer, let's call it color. So now I'm going to jump over and take a look again at my Renaissance paintings by Caravaggio. What I love the most about the Caravaggio's paintings is the simplicity. So even though the composition is quite dynamic, we have those very dynamic poses, they are very dramatic, they are still very, very simple. As I've mentioned at the beginning, we have always this super dark background and one source of light. The other thing is the really beautiful warm golden color, the tones. If we take a look at these images in general, we have many different paintings here, but they have similar color palettes. So we have those very beautiful creamy whites and very, very strong golden light. So my idea is to take this very mysterious, very vibrant energy of Caravaggio's paintings and this golden beautiful light and transfer it into my portrait of Daniel. Let's begin with the color balance tool. So let's move over to our color tab and let's grab the color balance tool. I will be working with color editor as well to fine-tune colors in this image, but first of all I want to apply this golden tone. I'm going to do this with the master tab in my color balance tool, and here I will go for this orangey yellowy tone. So this will already change the image a lot. So let's see, this is before and this is the after. Another thing I want to do here is to jump over to the color editor advanced, click on this plus icon, so this will give me the option to desaturate the whole image. Right now the colors are a little bit too strong. I don't want to keep this vibrant green, I don't want to have those red areas in the face. So I want to mute the whole image down and fine-tune it further on with color balance and with color editor tool. Okay, so I have created this first layer. This includes the whole image, all the colors, and I will be working with saturation. So I'm going to go for negative value here. I would say something, this is too much. Okay, something maybe around, let's say negative 13. So this is before and this is the after. Very subtle difference, but it is very, very helpful to have these colors a little bit less saturated and to see what can be done next. So we've been working with the color balance tool with the master tab. Let's now jump over to the shadows. So typically the most popular color grading would be going for complementary colors, and we have beautiful skin tones here. We could go for those oranges, yellow tones and complement it, contrast it, create strong color contrast between the warm skin tones and his top. So we could go for cold blue, even cyanish shadows. However, in case of this image, I'm going to do this differently. I will still create color contrast, but I want to keep this warm glow that we have created in our master channel. So instead of going for cold shadows, I'm going to go for something on a magentish side. So something like this I feel will work really, really well, and I'm going to maybe make these shadows just a little bit darker. Something like this. Okay. Let's now move over to the midtones, and here again I want to make the midtones warm. So this will affect the leaf, this will affect everything that lies here in the middle of my histogram. So this will be the skin tones, the hair, and those brighter areas here over his shoulder and the leaf. So I'm going to go for way more saturated color. So this gives me this beautiful warm glow, something around here. And as the next step, I'm going to go with my luminosity range for the midtones. So I will be using the right slider and I'm going to make them darker. So let's go for something like this. This affects the skin a lot and the leaf. Okay, when it comes to the highlights, I'm not going to touch them. They are already on a warm side, so I could possibly introduce a little bit of opposite color. So we are here with the midtones, with these oranges and yellows. I could introduce the opposite color from the color wheel. I could go for some cyans, but I think this will be entirely foreign tone. So let's just try. No, it doesn't work at all. So I'm going to keep my highlights neutral. So this is what we have achieved with the color balance tool. Let's see, this is before and this is the after. And now I'm going to jump over inside the color editor and fine-tune color grading. And by the way, if you are getting value from my videos, I would love you to subscribe to my channel, to like this video and to leave me a comment underneath this video. I reply to every single comment under my YouTube videos and I'm always super curious on your feedback. I would like to hear what you think, what are your suggestions, and I like to hear your ideas for future videos in this channel. Okay, let's jump back to our edit. So we've been color grading the image so far with color balance tool. We have used the color editor only to reduce saturation. So this is what we've done with the color editor tool. And now I'm going to fine-tune specific colors in this image. So first of all, I'm going to grab my picker and I want to actually add a little bit more blue to his top. Right now it's quite flat, it melts with the background and I feel it will benefit from a bit of adjustment. So I'm going to click here and extend the saturation range. And now let's make this tone a little bit cooler. So if I go towards the left, I'm going towards the green side. If we take a look here at these samples, the one to the left, this is the original tone and this is the one that I have just created. So if I go to the left, I'm adding green, I'm going towards the cyan, and if I go to the right, I'm going towards the magentas. So let's zero it out and let's go towards the left. Plus I want to increase saturation as well. Okay, so this adds depth to this image as well. The shoulder basically stands out stronger, it's not flat as before this adjustment. This could be a little bit too much. I can now focus on the greens and then I can still go back and work on this color further if it needs to be adjusted. So let's now focus on the greens. So I want to move away from those cold greens. I want to push them towards warmer tone. So I'm going to again use the picker, click somewhere here in this area and let's actually pull out this tool so we can see what we are doing here. So this is the selected color. I'm going to click on this icon. So we will be working with the whole saturation range of that green. So let's try manipulating with our hue. If I go towards the left, I will be making this tone warmer and this is what I'm after. If I go the other way, I will be making it colder. So I really love this effect when I'm adding warmth to this tone. This is changing a lot the original image, but it harmonizes very beautifully colors in this photo. So I'm going to go for quite a strong change, so I can even stop here, so something around -14. Let's now move over to the saturation slider and let's push it to the left. So this will make the color less vibrant. I'm basically desaturating the green. I'm going for quite strong negative value. So this brings the viewer's attention towards the face. Before this adjustment, when the green was stronger, it was stealing the viewer's attention from the portrait. So right now we still have this very beautiful form, very beautiful texture. We'll take care of it further on in this edit, but it is not competing with the portrait. So as a last step, I can slightly adjust the skin tone. So let's zoom in. I'm going to click somewhere around here, and let's see if I push it a little bit towards the yellows. So again, let's click on this icon. Now we are sure that we have the whole saturation range of this tone included. And let's see, if I go to the right, I'm adding yellow. Okay, let's zero it out and let's be very, very subtle here. So if I go for something around maybe 6.7, I wouldn't go any further. This starts looking unnatural. So I would say something around 6, and this is enough. I'm not going to touch neither saturation nor lightness. So let's see if I slightly zoom out and we can check. So this is our image before color grading, and this is our image after. So at this point, I think I will still jump over to the color editor, and I think the skin looked a little bit better before this change. So let's just make it more subtle. So I'm going to go for 2 instead of 6, and I'm going to revisit my curves. So let's jump over to our layer luminosity curves, where we were working on luminosity adjustments, and let's see what we can do here. If I go a little bit higher up, this brightens the image, but I need to be focusing on the skin. I don't want to overdo this. So I believe this was fine, and let's now see what can be done here. So if I'd like to go with this point a little bit lower to make this image even more dramatic, darken those midtones, this works quite well. And I can add one more control point to anchor the highlights in the face. Remember that you can always hover over the image and you will see the vertical orange line that is moving along the graph. So that way, for example, if I don't want to move over and affect this part of the highlights, I can see that this point needs to be moved a little bit towards the right, and I still have room here to make those midtones a little bit darker if I want to. So you can be really super precise when you are working with curves. Okay, something like this. We can push this one a little bit lower, and let's see if I lift the blacks. It makes the background really, really flat, but I think it's a little bit too much. So I think with the input 0 and output 15, this works quite well. And let's see if I darken this. No, I think this sort of adjustment works really well. Okay, so by now I've been focusing a lot on the face. I've been looking at the color of the skin, or the skin tones. I've been adjusting the face with the dodging and burning. And now, before I add clarity to the whole image, I want to focus specifically on this beautiful leaf, because there is plenty of potential. We have a lot of these beautiful details, amazing textures, and I want to add a little bit more impact to it. So let's create new field adjustment layer, and I'm going to create a mask that will cover only the leaf, and this can be done super quickly and super precisely with color editor. So I'm going to basically select this specific color. So we are on new layer. Let's grab our picker. Let's click inside the leaf. Let's make sure the whole saturation range is included. We can take a preview of the color that is selected, so we can extend it a little bit here, but let's not go too far, because this will start adding in the face to the selection, which is not what we after. So let's have the greens, and all we need to do now is just to click on these three little dots and select create masked layer from selection. So this will automatically create new layer, and this will be our mask. So let's hit M. This is the preview of a mask. So let's just rename this layer to leaf, and I can get rid of this layer. We don't need it anymore. We just needed it to create the color selection. So we have our leaf here, and what I want to do is to jump over to the exposure tab and go quite strongly on these two adjustments. So I'm going to increase clarity. Let's go for something quite strong, and I want to enhance structure as well. So when you are performing these adjustments, it's really helpful to look at your image at 100% magnification level. Now I'm 33, so let's just zoom in. So this will be 100. I'm on a retina display. I should go for 200. So if I was planning to print this image really large, this would be the best magnification level to judge what these adjustments are doing. But I'm going to reduce it. I will be looking at 100 because I want to see a little bit more of the whole image. So let's go for higher structure, and let's just see. So you can now see this is after applying the adjustment. You can look at all these beautiful lines, all the texture that is visible in the leaf, and now I will switch off this adjustment. So this is before. So with this adjustment we have made the leaf way stronger, but because we have muted its color, it's not competing with the subject, it's not competing with the face, it's complementing the whole image. So on this layer we've been working on clarity for only the leaf, and now I'm going to add new adjustment layer, new field adjustment layer. Let's rename it, let's call it clarity, and on this one I will be applying clarity to the whole image. So let's go for 100%, and let's move the clarity slider to the right. Okay, so something like this works really well. Let's see, this is before and this is the after. If you want, you can on the same layer add a little bit more of sharpening. I'm saying a little bit more because Capture One is automatically by default applying some sharpening to your images on the background layer right after you import your images inside Capture One. So this is the default value, the amount 140. If you want more sharpening, I will advise you to again go for magnification level 100%, and you can either add it here, or if you want to, you can do this on this separate layer, clarity, because then you can fine-tune it. You can go a little bit lower, either with the opacity for the whole layer, or you can target just sharpening. It's up to you. So on this layer I can, let's go for 100%, and let's add some extra sharpening. I don't want to overdo this. I believe this amount of sharpening is sufficient. If you want, you can add a little bit of film grain. So I'm going to go for Silver Rich, and let's just a bit of film grain simulation to make the image a little bit less digital and to finish it off nicely. The very last thing I would like to add to this image is to create a custom vignette. So what is bothering me a little bit is this lower left corner. It's a bit too bright, a little bit too strong to my liking. I want the viewer's attention to be focused on the face, on his eye, and this is a little bit too bright. And when I'm talking about the eye, I'm actually tempted to jump over to the eye layer, and I will try to make it a little bit brighter. So let's push our shadow towards the right. When we were starting from the original image, this sort of adjustment looked quite strong, but I believe we can go for something as high as 50. Okay, so let's now create very last adjustment layer, new field adjustment layer, and let's just call it vignette, even though I will use just the linear gradient to make this bit a little bit darker. So let's hit M. This will show us a preview of the mask, and I will go for negative value on exposure. So this will darken the corner, and this is too much. I'm going to move it a little bit backwards, adjust it so it will make sense. Let's push it this way, and let's change the angle. I don't want to affect the top of the leaf. I don't want to affect the shoulder, because this is very beautifully closing the composition. So I want to darken only this bottom left corner. Okay, so this is the sum of all our adjustments, including the luminosity adjustments and color grading, and this is the starting point. So we have started from here and we went towards this final result. Click on the thumbnail to check out more portrait editing tips in Capture One. In this video I cover 8 essential portrait editing tips. Thanks for watching. This was Kasia Zmokla from Digital Art Classes, and I hope to see you soon in the next video. Thanks for watching. See you, bye now.